And if I'm not mistaken, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is quite an early time to do these live, so I hope you've got your coffee, as I have. If you're watching the recording, then I hope you're having a nice day in the future. My name is Jamie Keddy. We're about to welcome a very special guest. Say hello in the chat. Also, let us know, what I'd like to know is if you were present for the lesson stream live 12 months ago, in which we had this very special guest, a good friend of mine, Orest Zub. Were you around? Did you take part? Because I know there's quite a lot of you did. So let me just, before we get started, I want to tell you about this man. Some of you know him already. He is based in Lviv, in the west of Ukraine, and he's got a great title, the title of being a media resistance fighter, which really does kind of sum up what he does, I think. He comes to us he presents a lot of great stuff through his YouTube channel. The link is below the screen here on YouTube. I really recommend subscribing and following the videos. You will learn a lot from Orest. I mean, the last year, this was one of the first videos he shared, which was a video that really the images here were really captured what the country was going through 12 months ago. And from here, he just took us on a journey. We've met refugees at the train station. Orest has a great knack of introducing us to other people. He's visited the countries around Ukraine, met people there. This Croatian soldier that was actually fighting in Ukraine, he had a great conversation with him. He's visited Romania and other countries surrounded it. He's been to cities where the Russian troops have withdrawn from, and shown us the extent of some of the damage, which is quite impactful. And really importantly, I think one of the most powerful things that Orest has done is introduced us to the people, and spoken to the people, and shared stories incredibly horrifically and harrowingly. He went to Bucha, and actually firsthand showed us the aftermath of this genocide that was that the Russian troops, after they'd moved away from this part of this outskirts of Kiev, horrible, and again spoke to some of the survivors who'd lost loved ones. He's very moving video, and again incredibly sad, this story of this woman who lost family. But you know, it gets from all different angles. This is Orest with his wife here, Marta, and reporting, business as usual from Ukraine, from Lviv, his hometown. I think I almost feel like I know Lviv just from watching the videos. I hope to visit there one day, and just going at the kind of the details, the other parts of the war. What happens to pets and animals. And I've not actually watched this video yet, but it looks fascinating, how to rebuild Ukraine with a 3D printing press technology. And strangely, this guy just popped up in one of the videos I watched recently, who's actually a friend of mine as well. I know him, Orest, and I met him at the same time. So so I think we're going to bring on Orest to the screen now, and here he is. Orest,
hello guys.
How are you? Love to see you again.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? It's hard to believe it's almost a year since our last talk, and wow, like so many things happened during the last 11 months. So yeah,
we have to ask, how are you? I mean, how is Orest's state of mind these days?
I'm absolutely fine. So people always usually ask, how are you? And in Ukraine we tell, okay, my grandmother is always telling, at least it's not worse. That's like this. I am like the contradict of my grandmother, because she lived through like turbulent times. She's like the World War II survivor, and like deported and so on. But I'm more optimistic, obviously, and usually I tell I'm fine. At least much better than most people in Ukraine probably are. Currently, I am in Warsaw. Just to note, I'm not like fleeing Ukraine as many people think, and so I'm just like here visiting, actually continuing doing what you just said. I participate in the conferences. There will be like some geopolitical meeting tomorrow. Yesterday, Mr. Biden, the president of the United States, was actually visiting Warsaw. So like it's a very happening week in Poland. It's a very happening week in Ukraine, and I think a crucial also for the entire world. Because we are like reaching in 2 days the anniversary of invasion, right, of Russian invasion to Ukraine. Many people will take some outcomes. It's a good point to just remember actually what was happening, because there were so many things around us. And I'm fortunate to continue living despite thousands of people who died in Ukraine. And I keep on going with the stuff I started 1 year ago. So let's do it. Let's speak about it.
You mentioned your grandmother there. I remember she featured in one of your videos, and you had a difficult time transporting her. How is your grandmother?
Unfortunately, since she passed away in July.
Oh,
Yeah, in the nursing home, like that very nursing home that I helped her to get to
mm,
when my family was evacuating. My grandmother stayed there like for a couple of more months, and unfortunately she passed away. She were like surrounded by us. We were
yeah,
visiting, me, my father, my wife. We were visiting her like almost daily, and she didn't suffer much physically. She's an old lady and looks like it was her time, unfortunately.
yeah.
And it's also very symbolical that it happened during this very sensitive timing for our family and for the entire country. But that's the story. Yeah.
Well, she had her family with her, and I'm sure you looked after her. I'm sorry to hear that. So how have you changed then in the last 12 months? Maybe a better question than how are you is how have you changed? I'm interested to
Uh,
know.
Everybody in Ukraine matured in 1 year. I mean, once you reach the point when there is like fear of actual death, this definitely change your like approach to life. I believe a little bit. Then what else? Like many things that looked important previously don't matter anymore. Like for example, I started my career like many years ago as a time management expert, and I wrote a book, and I did all the presentations around Ukraine about this and so on. But like now it doesn't really make any sense to me, because you actually don't need extra motivation to act. Like
Mm,
there is already enough of the uncomfort zone that everybody is subject to. Simply to act and to do the right things, yeah, that really matters.
yeah. This is
So yeah, you also mentioned Curtin, our common friend. That I met him in Uman. It's a central Ukraine. He is running a huge warehouse, which is like the transit point from Western Ukraine to Eastern Ukraine of delivering humanitarian aid. And we are, everybody from us, we are from this travel crew, like the nomad base, nomads, digital nomads, and so on. Also, even like before the war, travel took a significant part of my life. Simply, in terms of exploring, having fun, watching something new. Now it has absolutely different sense. I go to some particular areas, and including many frontline areas in Ukraine, in order to do something, or in order to feature this in media materials. Yeah, so it's not about entertainment anymore. Yeah, even like here in Warsaw, everything is very busy. I don't have time to go to the museum or do something else. It's mostly about just making things done and participate in this global movement that we are now having. This one, what else? I mean, in entire country, like all the 40 plus million people have their own story from Ukraine. There are at least 8 million people who fled the country as refugees. There are at least 8 million people who are internally displaced from eastern and southern areas of Ukraine to center and the west. So with such a huge scale of turbulence of movement, you can guess that things change. Like my business has changed. For example, before the war, I was running a paid membership community for entrepreneurs in Ukraine, with different like marketing tips, coaching, strategies, organizing events, which help people run their business, right? But it also lost complete sense to me because a third of my clients had to flee, a third of my clients went out of business, and then basically, it didn't. It's not something what is catching my focus at the moment. So I am now participating in the matters of our country and the matters of the entire free world, I must say.
It's funny because Lviv, where you're based, is in the west of the country, so it's kind of far away from the front line. But you're experiencing a huge change in your city, aren't you, from the internally displaced people either passing through it or actually making that as a new base. So you must have seen some huge changes in Lviv over the last 12 months.
Absolutely, yes. Like when I was talking with you, I believe it was early March, like last year. Our city was going through. It became a big hub for all the refugees. So basically, every day there were up to 100,000 people transiting through the city. Obviously, many people stayed in town, which became like a safe haven for many Ukrainians. And it's been reported that approximately 200,000 other Ukrainians found Lviv as their new home. At the same time, many citizens of Lviv, using this opportunity, because for many people it's also an opportunity to go somewhere, they just fled to other countries and making their life there. I must say, as a native Lvivian, even according to the vibe in the city and according to faces of people, I must say that there was a significant change of population as well. Economically, the city is doing fine. So even during the toughest first days of the invasion, our public transport system was operating, the city services, they were cleaning, taking out the garbage and so on. So that is fine. And Lviv is very effective city. So it's like a German approach to make things done on the Ukrainian level, so it's very efficient and it's like operating fine. The economy in the city is going even more active now, I would say, as before the war, because this became a big hub where like businesses, logistics, all the like places of interest meet. Because also it's very western city, it's considered to be the safest part of Ukraine, even though the front line is very, very far. So I would say that life in Lviv increased. Real estate now is booming, so there is a lot of new construction because people are taking their businesses and capital from the east to the west, and need to park it somewhere. At the same time, it became the crossroad between the rest of Ukraine and the Western world. So there are many foreigners, many international aid organizations. For the first month, actually, during March of the invasion, when Kyiv was besieged, Lviv de facto was functioning as the capital of the country, with many embassies and the headquarters of companies moved. However, now everything is back to Kyiv, and even the fact that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, a couple of days ago personally visited Kyiv, was walking on the streets with our elite and with Zelensky. In order to get to Kyiv, he could not fly. He had to take a train ride, which is like a 10-hour train ride through the entire country. It tells us that Kyiv is also fine. But there are some struggles. For example, electricity. So since August, Russians started to bomb the energy sector of Ukraine. So basically, they just wanted to freeze the entire nation during the winter, and pretty actively and often they were shooting these long-distance rockets targeting power plants in Ukraine. It was very scary in November, in October, because we didn't know how we are going to sustain through the winter. But it looks like it went fine. It's like our people who work in the infrastructure did an incredible job to continue country running, and with some minor blackouts, somewhere more, somewhere less. The life goes on. You have seen my video in Lviv. It actually was shot during the blackout. Some local shop owner, he just takes out the power generator based on fuel, starts it. It's pretty loudy, but his shop is running, and people continue by. And yeah, that's it's like a new reality, I would say. Mm-hmm.
This is the video of you and Marta going out for sushi.
Yeah.
The noisy time of those generators.
Yeah, and restaurants are working. For most people who stay outside of Ukraine, the entire nation geographically, probably is seen as the entire war zone, and it's true. Like, our country is in war, and there are rockets flying, even to distant areas like Lviv. But on the micro level, life goes on.
I remember when we met 12 months ago, and this, one of the messages that you really wanted to push was, yes, I mean, it'd only been 1 week, I think, maybe 10 days since the first day of the invasion. So I think it was March the 4th. So that's but 10 days after the initial day of the first day of the invasion, and you wanted to push the message that, yes, we're being attacked. Yes, Russia is invading our country, but life, it's really important that you see that life is continuing as normal, that there is destruction and there's death, but there's also there's normality as well. And you've pushed that message very, very well, and you do that very well in your videos. I wanted to just speak to you because you've got this label. I'm not sure if you still use it, but I quite liked it as media resistance fighter, which I'd be very interested to speak to you about, because what I've found incredibly interesting about what's going on right now is that the media, there is a war of the media, and they say that the truth is the first casualty of war, and I don't think ever have I seen that so graphically as I have now. And so I'd love to know a little about how you see this fight between the information that you're putting out there and the information that's coming from the other side of the border. How do you feel about that? Anything to say about that?
So there's a good example of this actually in like recent days. So on February 21st, Joe Biden did like a public speech on the central square of Warsaw next to the local royal castle, with like thousands of people listening to him. And this was kind of like a public response to what Putin have said one day prior to that, on February 20th. And Putin had like this long 1.5 hour speech justifying their activities without any details, because they're actually losing on the battlefield at the moment. And he was still telling that our intention was to denazify Ukraine, to liberate people in the country from this Zelensky regime, and that kind of these fairy tales. So this, at least like in the very beginning, it looks like it worked for the Russian society, and it's still working now. And many people, even like maybe around the world, because sometimes on my comments, especially for representatives of, let's say, African or Asian countries, I see that they write something like, yeah, like you're all Nazi there, and they came to help you, and so on. Which is like nothing more than just funny, especially now when we are already 1 year at war, and when everybody seen the atrocities, the committed crimes that happened. It's very important just to go to place to show exactly the picture, to speak to real people, and to explain, to go deeper, to show the perspective, what's happening on the ground. And once you have this, and we are fortunate that in the 21st century there's very wide media spread, and the internet in Ukraine is working even if there is a blackout, with all this like Starlinks, mushrooms around the country, and a very efficient cell connection. That's how you fight it. You fight propaganda, the ruthless propaganda, just with the truth. And I think Ukrainians did an amazing job in this direction. Yeah.
And it is quite terrifying, isn't it? You mentioned that it's working. And in my experience, it absolutely does. The propaganda coming out of Russia and coming out of the likes of Russia Today and Pravda, and it really does seem to be working. I was wondering how you'd feel. I've got a little clip that I was going to play and ask you to comment on it, Orest. I find this fascinating. I've become a little bit of almost caught up in the comparison of the media that comes out of out of my sphere and what comes out of Russia. And 12 months ago, this is a little clip that came from RT, that's Russia Today, which is a state-owned outlet. And so what I'm going to show you for everybody, this was a report that came from Russian state TV. Now, what you have to remember here is that Russia had just built up, I think, 130,000 Russian troops right down the border. So we didn't know what was happening.
Again,
yeah. Is that we didn't? The world did not know what was happening, but Russia had lined up 130 troops right beside the border, hadn't entered into Ukraine yet, but all these questions were being asked. The USA had some intelligence that Putin was going to launch an attack. The whole world was speculating, what should we do? And out of that is what I'm about to show you here. So give me one moment.
Just for the note to all the listeners, I didn't see the video, so it's also a surprise for me. And let's see how it goes. Yeah.
Okay. Oops.
Russia slams hysteria over its alleged plans to invade Ukraine as Western officials urge their citizens to leave the country amid media claims an attack is just days away. Well, the big story, of course, of the week, Russia has slammed what it brands manufactured hysteria over Ukraine, claiming that alarmist speculation over an imminent invasion is giving Kiev a pretext to scupper the Minsk agreements. As the panic around Ukraine reaches fever pitch, the world's been laying bets on how it will all play out.
It's a very different situation, and things could go crazy quickly.
So crazy and quickly, apparently, that people are being told to run while they can.
We encourage all American citizens who remain in Ukraine to depart immediately. We are in the window when an invasion could begin at any time, should Vladimir Putin decide to order it.
An invasion could begin at any time during the Olympics. Any American citizens who remain in Ukraine should leave now.
The media have also been keen to cash in on the hysteria, hyping up every juicy detail about the Russian invasion that's been imminent for months. After all, de-escalation just doesn't bring in the punters. But in all the chaos, they just can't seem to agree. Let's take the when, for example. Now, Der Spiegel and Politico might have money on the 16th, but Bloomberg's put a little X on the calendar on the 15th. Others think the end of the Olympics, that 20th is more likely. My team's hoping it's on our day off. And then there's a whole group who say we might be in for a very long wait because it's pretty muddy, so not great for tanks. So maybe this imminent invasion will come next Christmas when the ground has frozen over again. It's almost as if they all got together and decided to pick a date each, to cover all the bases and just flood the news.
We can talk about the collusion of the authorities of Western countries and the media in order to escalate artificial tension around Ukraine by the massive and coordinated publication of false information and geopolitical interests, in particular, to distract attention from their own aggressive actions.
Then we get to the how. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The media has given us so many options to choose from. Will it be a false flag operation, a few stealth forces, boats from the Black Sea, troops from their training exercises in Belarus? And just how big will the Kremlin go?
It is likely to begin with aerial bombing and missile attacks that could obviously kill civilians without regard to their nationality. A subsequent ground invasion would involve the onslaught of a massive force.
Now this leads us to our question, should we panic? Here, the Ukrainian president decided to play it safe and bet on keep calm and carry on.
Do we have tanks on the streets? No. When you read media, you get the image that we have troops in the city, people fleeing. That's not the case. I'm the president of Ukraine, and I'm based here, and I think I know the details better here.
But someone really should have told him to look out the window first. Oh, no, wait, that's a Ukrainian vehicle just rumbling around, burning fuel and waiting for that ever-imminent threat. So imminent, in fact, the Ukrainians are already warming up.
I'm disappointed that we seem to have dialogue between a mute and a deaf person. They seem to be listening but don't hear. Our most detailed explanations have fallen on rough ground. They say that Russia is waiting for the soil to freeze and become like a stone so that tanks can pass safely into Ukrainian territory. It seems that our British colleagues have the same soil today, from which numerous facts that we cited have bounced.
Have you seen stuff like that before? Do you keep your eye on that sort of news at all, Orest?
I mean, now I understand this and I can explain it definitely, but before I didn't look anything like this. Like in general, one of my time management principles is not to follow news in general and live my own life. Yeah, maybe like once you start hearing what people talk about this, then like some major events like squeeze into your informational area. Yeah. But here, and however, when this year I worked with many international journalists and obviously I read the news articles and so on, I must say that not only Russia Today, but every media is designed to work the way to keep people alert all the time. Like if you read through the articles, you always see like much more negative content than positive content. And the job of media is to stick people attention to them. You know, definitely if you keep updating every second, like just remember how it was going with recent earthquake in Turkey and Syria. You know, crazy. And you know, they were calculating every hour like how many people found dead, or like people are screaming, they are waiting for someone to rescue them. In Ukraine, it was something similar like this. Media were playing on the senses of people, keeping the tension very high in order to have views, you know, and to compete with other medias, you know. While in the meantime, the Russian forces, which were amassing at the Ukrainian borders like for at least half a year, like since summer 2021, you know, they needed some time to prepare, to put people around and so on. And media were just like showing this as a cartoon, while the rest of the people were around the world were watching. To tell the truth about the Ukrainians, there was no panic at all. At some point, like somewhere in January, there was like even, you know, these meme pictures where you have like a square and 4 pictures about Mr. Bean. He's your mate from the same country, and sometimes there was like one of the series of Mr. Bean is him staying in the fields, you know, full of sunflowers and waiting like a bicycle driving from the horizon towards him, you know, and it was like taking forever. So in this meme, it was like Mr. Bean is watching, Mr. Bean is sitting, Mr. Bean is almost lying, and then he's like already sleeping. Like Ukrainians waiting for Russia to invade. You know, that's kind of meme we had. So there was no Among Ukrainians, there was no panic. Definitely, I have seen most of my foreign friends, most of my expats, they left Ukraine at least within 2 weeks, because their embassies were ordering or recommending them to leave, and this was definitely a smart move to do. Some Ukrainians were even like booking the last tickets on the a few days prior to the invasion, just in case, to be safe. I know some people who left Ukraine, let's say in the middle of January, and then nothing happened for the entire month. They had to stay in Canary Islands or somewhere else. Their rent was already going into the second month. They told okay, let's come back, and nothing is happening. So it's just much bigger picture than one person and one person life. It depends how you address to this. Our president, our government were staying calm, and they were, as Presidensky told, they were not telling about any possible type of invasion. Everything is under control, and definitely there are many accusations to this, because when the invasion actually happened, this provoked massive logistical problems for millions of people who were traveling from east to west. Yes, but the government also responds that we were staying quiet, we understood, we were preparing, we were staying quiet to use the roads for our military purposes, to move well. If we order you to evacuate 2 weeks, this creates panic. We are not able then to provide the necessary logistical supports along the borders. And if you look actually what happened after this, you see that Ukrainians did an amazing job to hold the country, to protect in the best possible scenario that nobody would even imagine how it would go. If you ask me now how the things turned out during the first crucial months of invasion, I would say that in regard to status quo, we had on February 24, 2022, this is the best possible scenario. Because the entire world was watching Ukraine to fall. And you remember this.
Yes.
Now we are, if you roll back now, Ukraine regained more than 50% of initially lost lands. We have the support of NATO. American president is personally visiting Kyiv. There is a tank coalition of over 700 tanks being delivered to Ukraine within the nearest time. And now they're talking about the jets. So basically, the initiative in the war is definitely on the Ukrainian side. And nobody would even think that the country would still exist 1 year ago. So that's the story.
Yes. I think just before I meant to say, just before I continue, that video clip I showed you I found it through a mutual friend of ours that Darren Girdis. He showed this on his channel, and I recommend this channel. He does daily videos.
We actually have an interview with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll include the link to your interview with Darren as well. He some good stuff coming out of his channel. But I found it this is, Russia has the war of the choice. Ukraine is the war of necessity, but Russia is totally the victim according to their own media, and everything they do is just the West's fault. How could you possibly do what they did and put so many troops to the border and then blame the world's media for speculating, for panicking? It's just unfathomable. And then 1 week after that woman gave that message out, they actually did invade. I mean, but that's the way it works. You did the video I mentioned. I'm not going to show the picture again because it's too horrific, about the genocide, which has been defined as a genocide by the United Nations, as far as I believe, in Bucha, and the amount of how the Russian media responded to that, laughing about it. It was staged by Ukrainians, and there was this ridiculous video clip going around of a mannequin having been put into clothes by what looked to be like two soldiers, and that was the whole thing was proof that it was staged, which was later very quickly debunked. And it's just nothing is Russia's fault. Absolutely nothing, according to them. They are the victims. This is not a war of choice in their eyes. This is a war of necessity. And I think there's a few more nuance. There's something else I just want to ask you about.
Just for
Orest.
you to tell that at this point, nobody takes the words seriously, which comes from the Russian side, and it just became so obvious for everybody that it's just mostly false, obviously, and you cannot even speak on any terms. Like it's like, in Ukraine we tell when you throw a bean on the wall and it comes back. Like that's the reality how it is.
But I think a lot of Russians inside the country are actually, if they don't believe it at face value, and this has comes from some conversations with colleagues I've had in Russia, they assume that the media is false, fake news everywhere. There is no such thing as accurate reporting, as good journalism. Yes, our media is flawed, but so is the media in the whole world. So we might as well believe ours. Is a kind of feeling I get from it. And
it's
I think
all state-owned, state-controlled, and that's the voice of Kremlin. That's it.
Let me just put to you another quick story here. I want to know what you think about this, because one thing that I've noticed, there's an issue that people you might think, Orest, that people are united in this, but they are not. And let me just show you this here. It's funny, actually. This is RT. Can you see their slogans? Truth over narrative, question more. Truth, freedom over censorship, which is laughable. Freedom over censorship, as Putin has clamped down on press freedom. But what I wanted to show you here, this is a clip that came from Sunday's weekly video update, which is what I just showed you. And because of the security meeting in Munich right now, the story that's being reported by the Russian media is that there's protests, and there's 10,000, at least 10,000 protesters marching outside the meeting. And the story, according to Russia, is that what they're doing is they're protesting against Western armament of Ukrainian forces. And this is a really, really important issue for Russia to propagate. They want people to be against armament of Ukraine because it could lead to World War III. The Euronews, in their hand, reports the more nuanced. Yes, there were 10,000 people, but a very disparate group of disparate interests. A lot of people, anti-Putin, and some people would have been, anti-armament, but definitely a minority, according to this report, in any case. And I think that this is a really, really important issue. Why would it be wrong for people to be against arming Ukraine, Orest?
Okay, so first of all, just looking on these articles from my side, when I see a headline and I see a picture, according to the picture, it's a definitely pro-Ukrainian protest, because it's written, help defend Ukraine, fuck Putin, many Ukrainian flags, and so on. So here we have one headline, and the picture which doesn't align with this, just a group of people get. You can get, people gather in a bar and make this headline, people gather to protest about arming Ukraine. So this is like as simple as that. I can already see it's fake. Secondly, there is a narrative from people from Western countries that are accustomed to peace that let's not escalate, let's not arm Ukraine, let's start to negotiate and look for peace and stop this crazy war for the heck of the entire planet. From the first standpoint, the idea of stopping the war is good, right? Like everybody wants to stop the war, nobody wants to fight, and so on. But let me tell you the following. Imagine you live in your house, and you probably live somewhere, and your neighbor comes into your house, rapes your daughter, kills your son, sits in the kitchen, takes plates from this kitchen and tell, okay, let's now negotiate. I am staying in this kitchen with my house nearby, And let's keep things like this. Like, would you start negotiating with this guy who is on your kitchen and slaughtered your children, or probably first you will try to push him out somehow, make him pay for this, and then define like the things later. So this is very, very important. Like some people around the world tell that there's a grain problem because of Ukraine. Like, what's the problem? Because Ukraine resists, like this is the problem, or is the problem because Russia invaded? So this is stuff. Yeah, so it's just the matter of international laws, and it's a matter of truth. There was a good comment from the Prime Minister of Finland when one of the journalists asked them, like, how are you planning to stop the war? Like, what is the way to end this war? And she told the way to end this war is for Russia to leave Ukraine. Or like, you want to finish the war with the 20% of the country occupied. And the worst, what people don't realize, is that if this aggression will be tolerated in this way, it's just the matter of time and a few years of further attack.
And what's going on in Moldova right now? Do you know about that?
Yeah. There are some pushes to make pro-Russian protests,
which is, as far as Putin goes, is fair game, because Moldova is not part of NATO. And I mean, you could also look at history, and a lot of people do, and a lot of people have been, and comparing, Putin's pretext of expansion into Ukraine because of the Russian issue there is exactly what was done by the Nazis going into Czechoslovakia, on the pretext that there was Sudeten Germans in the country, and this was an issue then. Should Hitler be allowed to keep that part of Czechoslovakia? And famously, they did allow him to do so. What happened next? Poland. And so where do you stop the line? Putin has been shown time and time again not to stop. There is no matter how you look at it, there is no possibility of kind of finding a status quo right now way to stop this, as far as I can gather.
For Putin, this is like this is the question of the survival. If he backs on now, he will probably die, because there will be a coup, or people will resist, and so on. So he has to feed the people something, and glorifying, gathering the true ancient Russian lands, as stupid as it sounds, looks like it's working.
Let me ask you a quick question about Putin, because earlier this month, I think it was the 4th of February, the 2nd of February, 2nd of February, he went to Volgograd, which to celebrate the 80 years since the end of the Battle of Stalingrad. Volgograd used to be called Stalingrad, and he unveiled, and for one day they renamed it Stalingrad. And importantly as well, I've got a picture here to show you. Sorry to do this to you, but yes, here we are. This is 80 years commemorating the end of the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943. And yes, unveiled the day before Putin arrived, they unveiled a bust of Stalin himself in the city. Well, as a Ukrainian man, what does that mean to you, Orest?
It's very sad, because looks like they're glorifying one of the biggest butchers in the history of mankind. I believe the only person who is responsible for more death around the world in the history of mankind is Genghis Khan. The second is Stalin, which is like responsible for over than 20 million deaths. It looks like Putin looks in a very different direction, and the worst is that most of Russian society also accepts this and share this point of view. So there has to be some settlement to this, and we'll see how things develop from there.
I mean, Stalin was a master of manipulating the truth to the extent where how do you pronounce it? Holodomor or Holodom. How do you pronounce the word Holodomor? Is that right?
Holodomor. So holod is hunger in Ukrainian language, and more is something, to kill somebody slowly. Like morite is to kill somebody slowly. So Holodomor is death by starvation. Yeah.
Tell us what happened in the 30s, because a lot of for some reason this part of history people know about it a lot, but it's not. The word Holodomor is not as meaningful to people as, let's say, the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So just tell us what happened.
So yeah, this actually many people don't know about this, but during the 1932-33, one of the largest genocides actually happened in mostly in eastern Ukraine, when Ukraine became part of the Soviet Union, and in order to make things work somehow for the centralized power, they artificially created a hunger in the breadbasket of Europe, because Ukraine is the richest agricultural area. So the system within 2 years designed circumstances when people in the villages could not get access to food. There were different rules. There was a rule of Simkoloskiv, like 7 these I don't know, how do you call them? Like, how do you call a straw with the grain on it?
Wheat.
Wheat, yeah. Like, so 7 pieces of wheat. Like, if somebody would be caught with 7 pieces of wheat, like, he's sentenced to some crazy gulag works and so on. So basically, for those 2 years, 1932-33, NKVD, Russian police, were limiting people's access to food in the richest agricultural area in the world, which caused the death of around 4 million Ukrainians, predominantly in the south and east of Ukraine. And later, on these free up lands, Russian nationalities were invited. We are talking here about the Donbas. We are talking about the Kharkiv area, like basically those areas which now became the epicenter of the military actions. Yes. So yeah, that's the story. There is a movie about this, Mr. Jones. It's an American Hollywood movie. When the American journalist is visiting Soviet Union during the early 30s, he witnesses everything what happens, and then he, of course, going through hardships, trying to tell the truth, and being like silenced by the propaganda machine. So this is also very important. Now it's good that people start talking about this and realizing that only within 2 years, 4 million people died because of starvation, which is crazy, absolutely. And this is also one of the pretexts to problems we have now, because the area was populated by Ukrainians, 4 million people died, their homes became Russian population was introduced, population became mixed, and now we have the Donbas and South problem. Yeah.
So this was Stalin's work.
Oh yeah, it was a carefully designed artificial way to depopulate the area, to minimize the statehood of Ukrainians and simply decline national population of Ukrainians.
And so this says a lot, I think, if Putin is, and has been for a while, aligning himself with this man who is on a par with Hitler, caused more deaths of his own civilians than Hitler, we should point out. And I think that says a lot. I know you've got to run off, Orest. You're a busy man.
You too. Thank you very much for inviting, and thank you for staying on the agenda, for raising this cause. I am more than happy to talk many other things with you, Jaime. So please reach out to me anytime, and let's keep on going, because guys, the war is still not over. In fact, it's far from being over, but the initiative is on the side of Ukraine, of course, with the support of the entire Free West, and we are super grateful for this, how things are turning actually at the moment.
It's a pleasure to see you again, Orest, and we'll definitely have you back. Maybe not wait 12 months, maybe get you back sooner.
Let's make it sooner, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck, all the best, and lots of love.
Thank you,
Bye-bye. So just before we go, just a couple of things here. What was I going to show you here? Yes. There's a website I've come across which I found to be quite useful. I mentioned this. Whoops, he's still here. This one right here. I mentioned this site here, which is a report came from Russia Today, and I also mentioned this one, Euronews. Euronews is brand new to me. I'd never really had much to do with Euronews. I've got a European nose. But there's a website I've come across called Ground, which I've found to be quite useful. And Ground offers a sort of information about specific news sources, outlets, channels, and websites. And it's very useful. It tells you who owns it. It gives you a reliability rating, tells you about the leaning. So Euronews has a sort of left leaning, but a high factuality. And I found this to be quite useful. Comparing it with Russia Today, for example, it's at a very low factuality. It's a really important thing to point out, I think, that, when you do have a free press, the truth is actually a commodity and something that people want to buy. There is a market for the truth. And as soon as there's a market for the truth, it has to be taken seriously. And it's something that, unfortunately, you don't seem to get in Russia. Or if you do, it's becoming, you do so less and less. So if you've got any questions to ask that you wanted to ask but didn't because we didn't have time, send them my way. And I'll get them to Orest, all right? And I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I'll be doing this again next week at the more regular time, I hope. But maybe Thursday around about 6 o'clock. I'll let you know, all right? If you don't get the lesson stream post, you can sign up for it below, and I'll keep you informed of the next lesson stream live, all right? Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day, have a great Thursday, and we'll see you soon, all right? Bye-bye.